If even half of these rumors are true, Formula One is about to get a whole lot more interesting. Or a whole lot more cooked. G'day legends, Papaya Koala here, with another completely sensible, definitely not unhinged episode of Formula Koala. Now normally, Papaya Koala and the Koala crew, well, we don't do rumours. Because rumours in F1 are usually about as reliable as a snake strategy call from the pit wall in the rain. But these ones have just enough spice to make you raise an eyebrow and go, hang on a second. Paddock whispers are saying that GP, yes, that GP, Max's ride or die, voice of reason, emotional support race engineer, is heading to McLaren. Not as an engineer, not as a performance guy, no, as team principal. In 2028. Right, so naturally that raises two very normal, not at all chaotic questions. Where is Stella going? And what on earth is happening to Max? Because the next rumor is that Stella is heading back to Ferrari. Yes, that Ferrari, the spiritual home of chaos, passion, the tifosi, and strategic confusion. Now remember, Stella used to be the performance engineer for the mighty Michael Schumacher, back when Schumacher was totally dominating in the Ferrari stallion. And he's already said that Oscar reminds him more of Schumacher than any other driver he's worked with, highlighting their shared analytical approach, rapid improvement, and ability to remain calm under pressure. Not a small call. That's not he's pretty good. That's this kid might be him. Even though Oscar himself said, I've got a hell of a long way to go to be talked about in the same air as someone like him. Yep, talented and humble. And then you add a few very interesting little details. Oscar has Italian heritage. He's been learning Italian. He's basically a development weapon disguised as a quiet Aussie. So now the question becomes, are we about to see Oscar in red? Because this koala won't lie. I think I'd look fantastic in crimson. Here's the thing. Ferrari's strategy for the last decade, give or take, has basically been hire a world champion and hope for the best. And look, they've had great drivers, but what they haven't had is a true team builder. Schumacher wasn't just a champion, he was a developer, a grinder, a fix every tiny problem until the car stops being a tractor kind of guy. And Oscar is exactly that. It's no coincidence McLaren became competitive only after Oscar arrived. Before him, back of the midfield. After him, suddenly things start working. Why? Technical feedback. Calm, precise communication. Actually telling the team what the car is doing. Revolutionary, I know. So maybe, just maybe, Stella's long game is go to Ferrari, take Oscar with him, build something properly. And if Charles is still there, a Charles and Oscar driver lineup, that's not just a team, that's a fan favorite waiting to happen. So we know why Ferrari would want Oscar, but why would Oscar go to Ferrari, you ask? Well, if you have to ask that, you may have accidentally blinked through the last couple of seasons. Because here's the slightly awkward reality. As long as Fat Rat and his very shiny preferred Project Lando are running around at McLaren, there's always going to be a ceiling, a polite little invisible fence, a steady-on mate limiter that seems to appear at very convenient moments. And look, you don't even have to take Papaya Koala's word for it. We've already had some rather spicy comments floating around, under oath, suggesting Oscar wasn't exactly the preferred recruit, which, is a fascinating starting point for what has become a very carefully managed internal hierarchy. Now, purely hypothetical, totally innocent thought experiment here. Imagine Oscar walks into Ferrari, new environment, clean slate. No.
Hold position. Please hold position.
No. Swap positions. Not.
Too marginal. Don't do that again.
And definitely not. Keep it down, mate. After he's been strategically neutered, just drive the car. And suddenly, hypothetically, you've got a driver who's allowed to actually be the driver. Let's say that turns into a Ferrari golden era. Let's say it turns into multiple titles. 5, maybe. Who's counting? At that point, history gets a bit awkward for McLaren, doesn't it? Because then the story isn't, we backed our guy. It becomes, we had that guy, and chose someone else, someone lesser. And that's a very different documentary voiceover. Now flip it back, because staying means continuing in a system where, at best, you're co-leading, sort of, but somehow always the one expected to compromise. At worst, you're the world's most overqualified development driver with podiums. And here's the real kicker. If a driver genuinely believes the team will always prioritize someone else's story over their own, then staying isn't loyalty. It's just volunteering to be the supporting character. So why would Oscar leave? Not because it's easy, not because it's guaranteed, but because somewhere else, there's at least a chance the ceiling isn't pre-installed. And sometimes, better the devil you know only works if the devil lets you win. Now this is where it gets interesting, because GP has previously said he wouldn't engineer another driver. It would feel like cheating on Max, which is either very wholesome or very inconvenient for this rumor. So why would he leave? Why go to McLaren? Why switch roles? Why 2028? Ah yes, 2028. That magic number, because that's not next year. That's the year after. That's after a nice, cozy little thing called gardening leave. So if GP is heading to McLaren in 2028, that suggests one very spicy possibility. Max might be leaving F1 at the end of this season? And honestly, with these current cars, would you blame him? Max has always said he'll leave when racing stops being fun. And right now, let's be honest, this isn't exactly wheel-to-wheel, elbows-out real racing, is it? This is more battery management, lift and coast. Don't fight your teammate, and strategic chess matches at 300 kilometers per hour. Which is great if you enjoy spreadsheets and sedentary sports, like cricket. But Max is a racer, a proper real racer. So if the racing isn't delivering, and GP is planning his exit, then yeah, the dots start connecting themselves. Now here's the uncomfortable bit. Love him or hate him, Max has been the thing keeping F1 interesting during dominant eras. We've seen this before. One team runs away with it, usually arrows. Everyone else plays catch-up. And the racing gets a bit processional. Take Max out of that, and suddenly, you don't just lose a driver. You lose unpredictability, edge, and that something might actually happen here feeling. And fans? They don't hang around for processions. They leave. Because real racing fans don't care who wins. They care that it's a battle. And if Max leaves F1, he's not going somewhere slower. He's not downgrading. He's going somewhere where the racing is real. And race fans will follow. So, let's recap the chaos. GP to McLaren as team principal, Stella potentially to Ferrari, Oscar possibly following him, and Max maybe walking away entirely. Now, are these just rumors? Absolutely. Are they slightly unhinged? Also yes. Are they just believable enough to make you nervous? 100%. So what do you reckon? Is Max leaving at the end of the year? Is Oscar heading to Ferrari? And does he have what it takes to bring back the glory days? Let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps the channel. Even more than a perfectly timed undercut. And if you want to go that extra step, you can always join or shout Papaya Koala a coffee. See link in the description below. Because let's be honest, if these rumors turn out to be true, I'm going to need it. Vibes? Yeah, that feels about right.